The first thing I noticed was how quiet everything felt. I stepped out of the arrivals gate at Vancouver International Airport and instinctively tightened my shoulders, something I always did in big American cities. But there was no need. The air smelled faintly of pine and jet fuel. There were no shouting cab drivers, no echoing announcements barked through old speakers, no crowds surging toward baggage claim like a stampede. Instead, it was just a calm. I remember watching a border agent politely guide a confused traveler through the customs kiosk. Not rushed, not annoyed, just patient. And when it was my turn, she asked about my trip, smiled when I stumbled over my hotel name, and even gave a few tips about the SkyTrain. I kept waiting for the catch, some moment where the tone would shift, where I'd feel like I was back in line, like I was used to. But it didn't come. Outside, the taxi driver opened the door for me and offered me a bottle of water from his cup holder. "It's a long ride downtown," he said. "Might as well get comfortable." That's when it hit me, this wasn't just good service. This was something else. Something slower, more deliberate, less guarded. Driving into the city, the landscape felt familiar but subtly different. The roads looked like Seattle, but cleaner. Fewer billboards, more bike lanes. The skyline had that North American glass and steel look, but the people moved at a softer pace. No honking, no shouting into phones. Just commuters waiting at lights, pedestrians actually using the crosswalks, and a sense of stillness I couldn't quite name. The real culture shock landed the moment I tried to buy a coffee. I stepped into a small cafe near my hotel, already prepping my card and deciding between drip and iced. But no one was rushing. The barista greeted me with a soft hi there and waited. When I ordered a black coffee, she asked if I wanted an Americano or a brewed medium roast. I stuttered. She smiled. Behind me, no one sighed impatiently. I sat by the window, watching the kids walk to school alone, laughing, unbothered. No adult shadowing them nervously from a distance. No one staring at them with suspicion. Just a normal morning. And it felt surreal. It was then I realized something unsettling. The anxiety I carried every day back home, the shoulder checking, the backpack clenching, the car door double locking wasn't necessary here. At least, not in the same way. I felt like I had stepped into a parallel version of North America where the volume had been turned down and the edges sanded off. And as strange as it sounds, that quiet was the loudest shock of all. The first few days felt like a long exhale I didn't know I'd been holding. But that calmness started to unsettle me in unexpected ways. I wasn't just in a quieter version of the US, I was living inside a rhythm that didn't match my own. On my third day in Vancouver, I went grocery shopping. I reached for a gallon of milk and stopped. Liters. Everything was in liters and grams, and the prices higher than I was used to seemed to slow me down. People weren't in a hurry either. No one rushed through aisles or aggressively passed me with carts. They just moved. Even the cashier didn't rush me. She waited while I fumbled with my reusable bag. Yes, people brought their own and gently explained the bag fee when I didn't. It wasn't judgmental. It was just calm. But the real contrast showed up at work. I'd taken a 6-month placement at a Canadian tech firm, remote-friendly. Same kind of job I had in New York. Same software, same deadlines. But everything about how people worked was different. Meetings started with actual greetings. People asked how you were and waited for a real answer. Slack wasn't a flood of after-hours pings. In fact, at 5 p.m., my coworkers just stopped. One of them once said, "Okay, logging off to take the dog out and make dinner. See you tomorrow." Like it was the most normal thing in the world. And it was. I tried to keep grinding like I used to, late nights, multitasking, jumping on early emails. But I noticed something strange. No one seemed impressed. If anything, they seemed concerned. One colleague gently messaged me, "Hey, don't forget to take time for yourself. We pace things differently up here." And they did. Work was important, but it wasn't everything. No one bragged about being overworked. No one glorified burnout. I once mentioned a big client win in a group chat, expecting kudos. Instead, someone replied, "That's great. Hope you get to relax a bit this weekend now." That response sat with me longer than I expected. Social life had its own quiet code. People were friendly, but reserved. My neighbor smiled each morning, sometimes helped shovel the shared walkway, but never lingered to chat. When I offered to bring cookies to a small building get-together, she just nodded and said, "That'd be lovely," then went back inside. It wasn't cold, it was measured. It was like everyone was careful not to intrude. Respect for space wasn't just a value here, it was a reflex. It took me a while to see the upside. At first, it felt lonely. But over time, I started to see how that space made the warmth more genuine when it came. One weekend, I got invited to a backyard barbecue, nothing flashy, just neighbors, folding chairs, everyone bringing a dish. And when I mentioned I was American, no one turned it into a spectacle. A guy just nodded and said, "That must be a big shift." Bet the healthcare's a surprise. He wasn't wrong. Even the way people talked about doctors felt different. No anxiety, no bargaining, just calm acceptance. The idea that a broken bone wouldn't drain your savings. That you could go to a clinic and not calculate your deductible first. It made me realize how much energy I'd spent on just managing risk back home. And in that stillness, those slow mornings, quiet kindnesses, and non-performative interactions, I felt something unfamiliar. Safe. Not just physically, but emotionally, too. It didn't happen all at once. But one morning, as I sipped coffee by the window of a small cafe on Commercial Drive, watching two older men play chess in the park across the street, I realized something had shifted. Not in Canada. In me. I was no longer bracing myself. No more instinctive glances over my shoulder. No more tension in my jaw during a walk at night. I had unlearned something I hadn't even realized was so deeply ingrained, the constant need to be on guard. It was like my nervous system had finally caught up with the pace of this country and had decided it could rest. The emotional transformation snuck up quietly. I wasn't just adapting to Canada's calm, I was craving it. The slower pace of work no longer frustrated me. It felt like dignity. The politeness I once found overly cautious now felt like a shared agreement to be decent. I stopped seeing kindness as weakness and started recognizing it as a kind of strength, resilient, patient, enduring. But I also missed things. I missed the casual intensity of American friendships, the way people back home dive into deep conversation within minutes. I miss the creative ambition that buzzes through cities like New York and LA, the sense that anything can happen, and everyone's trying to be the next big thing. Canada had a quieter ambition, a deeper current, but sometimes I missed the noise. Still, the trade-offs felt worth it. I saw how Canadians valued balance. Not just work-life balance, but emotional balance, too. There was less pressure to perform, more room to just be. I stopped feeling like I had to prove something with every conversation, every task, every gesture. And in that space, I started listening more to others, to the city, to myself. One weekend, a group of us rented a cabin near Whistler. It snowed the first night, and the power went out for a few hours. No one panicked. We lit candles, opened wine, and played cards by the fire. One friend joked, "Now it's officially Canadian." I looked around the table at the mix of people. The quiet laughter, the shared ease, and felt something deep settle inside me. This wasn't just a new country. It was a new way of being. By the time my contract ended, I had stopped thinking of myself as someone visiting Canada. I was just someone who lived here now, who understood its rhythm, who saw the beauty in the small things: snow cleared off sidewalks before dawn, kids walking to school alone, neighbors offering a nod of acknowledgement that said, "We're in this together." As I packed my apartment to move back to the States, I felt heavier than I expected. Not just because of the winter clothes I had somehow acquired, but because I knew I was carrying something with me that couldn't be packed. Perspective. Canada hadn't changed everything, but it had changed enough. It taught me that safety isn't just a matter of crime stats. It's a matter of trust. That peace isn't the absence of noise, but the presence of care. That community doesn't always need to be loud to be real. And when I stepped off the plane back home, into the familiar rush of announcements, car horns, and that ever-present buzz of urgency, I didn't flinch. I just breathed and held on to that quiet I had found across the border. Because once you've lived inside calm, you know it exists. And no matter where you go next, a part of you keeps listening for it.